Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Young Guns, the Outset Panel Show. This is a special episode because for obvious reasons, unless you've just been disconnected completely, and then I envy you for that. This is our post-election thoughts. And this episode is, I'm joined by three people who are not from Outset, but nonetheless, they're good friends. And by the way, Evan is missing this week, and he's our regular on the show. So our salute to Evan. So I'm joined this week by Tucker McClendon, by Giovanni Triana, and by Benjamin Rajadurai. And we're going to give some post-election thoughts. We're going to go kind of a breakdown of the demographics and how the vote went. We're not going to spend too much time on the process because you watched Wolf Blitzer incite fear in children last night. You don't need to relive any of that. We are going to talk about the path forward for America, the path forward for conservatives and Republicans, and the path forward for a Donald Trump presidency. And we'll get into what our thoughts are there. But first, welcome to the panel. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, Stephen.
Doing well.
Good deal. You all sound just very happy and motivated after last night. As I spent most of my day in a coffee shop. I ordered the largest one they have. So let's talk about the election results. So the first thing, I mean, there's obvious surprise that Donald Trump won. I think there's a humility in political media and just politics in general, being able to admit that you were wrong. And yesterday on Outset, we put up electoral map projections. All of them were wrong. Even Benjamin Green, who said that neither would reach 270 and that Evan McMullen would take Utah. So we were all wrong. Even with the popular vote, we were wrong. But this is what we ended up with. Clinton, 228 electoral votes, and Donald Trump, 279. This is the front page of one newspaper. You might recognize who they are. This was obviously before they even called the race, because they didn't call the race till about 3 a.m. So it was just pictures of sad and happy people, which is, in essence, this election. What's interesting, I think, is that Clinton won the popular vote by a couple 100,000 there, but of course didn't have the electoral votes. To do a quick breakdown of some of what happened, and then I'll get your guys' thoughts on it. So Trump underperformed with Republicans, but not that much. Romney got 93% of the Republican vote. Trump got 90, so that's fairly interesting. Hillary Clinton proved that she is not a candidate like Barack Obama. There was an enthusiasm gap that was talked about, and it was real. She got 89% of Democrats. Obama got 92% in 2012. So obviously a big shift there. Also, Latino voters, I think was really interesting to see. Latino voters, Hillary Clinton underperformed, not just from Obama, but also just the projections. 65% voted for her. 29% voted for Trump, which is up from Romney's 27%. And you also have the millennial vote, us young people. Trump tied Romney's millennial vote with 37%. Barack Obama in 2012 had 60%. Hillary Clinton lost 6% of that, had 54% of the millennial vote. Still overwhelming support, but wasn't enough to get her past the post. So, I mean, I fell asleep before the election results came in. I woke up at 5:30, got on Twitter, and saw some very 5:30 a.m. tweets about the result, and it was weird. Ben, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts when this all came? First, when did you first realize that, oh, he might actually win this? And then what were your thoughts when that was solidified?
I think I first thought he was going to win it when the upshot projection put him up at like 55%. And I was like, oh, wow, like this is weird. This shouldn't be happening. And then slowly you see the results coming in. Race not tightening up the way it should have. And all of a sudden he's picking up states he shouldn't be picking up. And, it hit me around like 12:30. Like he actually pulled it off, which is an impressive feat. Like it's undeniably an impressive feat. He flipped every political pundit on his head. and credit to him on that. But also I think that people should be taken with a grain of salt, right? Republican Party still, since 1988, has only won the popular vote one time. And even though we did better with some of these demographics, like we can't continue to run campaigns like the way that Trump ran this one. We can't alienate Hispanic voters. We can't antagonize the Muslim community. Like those are voters and bases that we need to grow, and communities that we need to engage. So hopefully, congrats on the win, but let's make sure that we fix the mistakes we did this year to ensure that we can kind of continue to grow as a party.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, especially the part about the way that Donald Trump campaigned is not necessarily, this is what I've said throughout the entire election when talking about 2020 or even the midterms. There is only one Donald Trump, and I'm not sure if his strategy can be repeated successfully. Giovanni, in terms of the Republican ground game, there was this idea that Donald Trump really didn't have a ground game and that Hillary had the advantage there. Obviously, not so true. What are your thoughts on kind of party strategy, and is this something that you think a lot of Republicans may kind of emulate in future races?
Well, I noticed a switch whenever he fired his campaign team and started over. I really saw him start to get some ground game and actually start to compete. For me, for a long time, I thought he didn't even want to win. And I was really shocked by it. And at some point, I even had a theory that him and Clinton were in cahoots with it. But after he after he fired his campaign team and actually started to care about this race, I think it really hit home for him. And I think he realized what he was actually running for. So Trump wasn't my first pick. He was actually 17 out of 17 for me. But I did vote for him, and I justified it. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to start off a fresh page with him and see if he can actually, do some of the things that he's planning on doing. I saw today on Fox he's planning on imposing term limits, which is something that I can stand behind 100%. So hopefully he lives up to it.
Yeah, and I think there's a very serious discussion going on now about, okay, the Republican Party is the strongest it's basically the strongest it's ever been. He has 2 years. He has enough political capital to get things done. I don't know if I would necessarily go as far as a mandate. I think that's very hard to define, and people use it incorrectly all the time. But he certainly has political capital going into it. I think a lot of people are looking at what he'll do with that. Tucker, let's get you in here. When did it first hit you, and what were some of your thoughts on that?
I was actually doing a war room for our congressional candidate here who won, and we were looking. They called his race, and Virginia was actually a state that I wasn't looking at very much, and I just happened to click on it and saw that he was up by like 5% with like 60% of the vote. And I was like, that just has to bode well for North Carolina and even some of Pennsylvania. And I think it did. So that's when it first hit me. It was probably about 8:30. And of course, I never supported Trump. And I was telling the people that did, I was like, he actually could have a shot at this thing. And I was kind of blown away the rest of the night. 8:30 Central Time was when I tweeted, Jesus, he might win. And that was still kind of early, but it was interesting. And certainly I think that's the biggest shock of the night, is that the theory was that he'd have to win every single swing state and a Democratic blue wall state, as they call them, historically Democrat states. And like, again, admitting you're wrong is a great thing to be able to do. And there's just, I did not see, and neither did most other people, especially our political Lord and Savior, Nate Silver, did not even project something like him taking some of those blue states. So it's a very, very interesting election, historic in its own right. Well, I mean, it was going to be historic either way, but certainly historic from the Trump perspective. You have, a candidate with no former political experience now heading to the White House, and you had this morning. Hillary Clinton gave her speech that she did not give last night. She just told people to go home, and she gave her speech today.
And, people on CNN were reading into it because she was wearing purple, and they said that that's red and blue mixed together. So unity. But she gave her speech. President Obama gave a speech. Paul Ryan gave a press conference. I thought Paul Ryan's was actually fairly good. It was very, let's focus on passing some of our conservative reforms and some of our conservative better way agenda items, as he calls them. So now we enter into this reality of Donald Trump is the next president. Republicans, even the Trump campaign, did not think that it would necessarily happen. Well, they knew it was a tall order, at least. And so now the question of governing comes up. And governing is it's not the same as running a campaign. I think that's fair to say. It's a whole different ballgame. Any thoughts? We'll start with Giovanni this time. Any thoughts on kind of what the governing component's going to look like? First, let's start with the transition, because a good transition is indicative of a fairly good White House. And so, what do you think some of those transitional pieces and some of the first, 100-day actions are going to look like from Trump? Can't hear you. Or wait, let's try this. Try now. Not yet. All right, we'll come back to you. Let's go Ben for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion that a lot of the stuff he campaigned on, he didn't really buy. Just things like immigration, he's been on both sides of the issue. And I think that even he knows at this point that to pursue the immigration agenda that he campaigned on is probably not the smartest idea. I think he's going to leave issues like that to the side. I also think that long term, we're looking at two different branches of the Republican Party leading two different branches of government. You've got Trump leading the executive branch, and you've got Paul Ryan leading the legislative branch. And there's some clear tension on issues there. It's going to be very interesting to see how they work that out. And I'm pretty confident they will. I think that at the end of the day, our ideas are going to win out, and I'm pretty optimistic that we'll get some good things done.
Tucker, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a wild card. I don't necessarily know. I'm interested in seeing what his cabinet looks like, Secretary of State, and also how fast they do act on Obamacare and getting that repealed, and what pieces they do leave in it, like pre-existing conditions. And if he actually takes the cornerstone of his campaign, which was immigration, and how fast he acts on that, and the executive orders, what he repeals of those, and how quickly he does that. I think it's all interesting. I'm not going to try to guess what he does. I gave up guessing a long time ago with Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think the common theme of this is I'm kind of done. I found myself last night theorizing of what if Trump wins, what if Hillary wins. I was like, I shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Clearly not a good guesser, as many people, many other people are not. Giovanni, it looks like you might be functioning there technically. Your thoughts? Still can't hear you.
What about now?
Can hear you now. Perfect.
I think Tucker hit on this, and Trump's a wild card. We don't know what to expect from him. However, I do know that the system did need reform, and hopefully this can be a medium to get that reform. First 100 days are going to be very important, like you said. Hopefully he will calm down the rhetoric that got him elected, specifically in the primaries. He really did a good job of calming down on that towards the end of the campaign. But I'm hopeful. I am. Like I said, he's not my first pick, but often in politics it's compromise. And I know, Clinton may have been good for international relations, but her history is just full with scandals, and I really couldn't get behind that. So I'm hoping Trump can actually live up to some of the things that he's promised, and that he doesn't turn out to be that demagogue that I saw in the primaries, threatening to silence reporters or any of that nonsense.
Although press briefings with him will be just a hoot and a half to watch. I'm so excited for the first Trump press briefing.
Yeah, it's gonna be a wild 4 years.
Yeah. So let's talk about the way forward. Originally when I thought of this, again, I was operating, and I shouldn't have, but I was operating under the assumption that this might be a Republican loss. But really, I think there's still a conversation to be had about the way forward. Even with a Republican win, I still see, you guys tell me if you disagree, but I still see a damaged Republican brand. I think messaging is still a little off. I think strategy is now a little misguided, as we talked about earlier. Campaign strategy for Republicans in the future may be guided by Trump, and it might not necessarily go the same way. I think that policy, at least in like the official party platform, is a little wonky in some areas. And so let's first talk about the path forward for Republicans. First of all, do any of you agree or disagree that the Republican image is, even with the win, a little hurt?
I do.
I as well.
I don't know. I think that it is definitely took a hit during the primaries and campaign season, but at the end of the day, we won. Not only did we win the presidency, we won the Senate, we won the House, we won a majority of governorship, as well as a majority of state legislators. I think that's something that's kind of powerful, and Trump definitely did hamper the image a little bit. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're still on top, and I think that a lot of the stuff that we do need to fix are things that we can fix that don't require an entire whole-scale rehabilitation like we would have needed if we had lost. And I think that there's definitely a good foundation that we can build on that potentially I think could lead to some GOP dominance for a long time. Like, if we're winning states like Michigan and Wisconsin on a regular basis, as well as starting to do better with Hispanics, we could create a pretty sizable electoral college number going into an election.
Let's talk about party because this is kind of about the path forward. Let's talk about party realignment a little bit. You're seeing coalitions change, not just in the Republican Party, but within the Democratic Party as well. The Republican Party really had kind of a populist message. Had a populist message. A lot of people are saying that this was kind of the working class revolt, if you will, which has a negative connotation sometimes too. But nonetheless, I think the victory, a lot of it was driven by working class people. And so you're seeing this realignment in the party. Tucker, I'll start with you on this one. Do you think that that's a particularly helpful realignment, both in terms of party success down the road, right? Because we're talking about 2 years from now, 4 years from now and beyond, but also do you think it's a win for conservatism and kind of what is your projection? Again, you probably don't want to make too many projections, but what is your overall feeling there?
I think it depends on these next 2 years. If we have a successful next 2 years, we retain the Senate in 2 years, we're still pulling out upset victories in states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, then yeah, I think the party will be a lot more open to a realignment to, I guess, what is Trump conservatism, if you want to put it that way. Like you said, I don't know about making predictions. I think we'll see a lot. I think if he can bring the party together, and that's a big thing, I think, with this cabinet, I'm going to see if he's going to, go with Jeff Sessions, with I can't draw on a blank, with people that have stuck with Giuliani, stuff like that, or if he's going to branch out and go with someone that turned him down, like Senator Bob Corker, or Nikki Haley, that kind of stuff. If he can do that, I don't know if there's a need for a realignment. But if he goes the same way, keeping Sessions and whatnot, then I think he will. And at that time, we'll see how that affects the party.
Maybe he'll reach out to Ben Sasse for a cabinet position. Although I don't know if you want to do that. I don't know if you want to do that because we only have 51 in the Senate. So maybe not. That'd be a bit of a gamble. Giovanni, your thoughts on kind of this realignment theory? First of all, do you think it's true that parties are realigning? If they are, is it significant? And how do you think that's going to change the core conservative message or even on the policy side? Can't hear you. Technical issues about. While you figure that out, we'll go to Ben with that question.
Yeah, I mean, policy issues wise, if we can maintain this coalition that we have now, it's a pretty strong coalition. Last night we watched the entire Democrat firewall from 2008 and 2012 crumble, and if we can maintain a policy platform that stays conservative but also caters to those voters in those states, I think there's some really powerful potential out there. Not too sure about cabinet positions. Again, it's Trump. We have no idea what he's going to do, but I am very confident in what the GOP can do going forward.
For sure. So, well, Giovanni, are you audio back up?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. So we saw the Union Democrats definitely flock to Trump in Wisconsin. I believe he won Michigan, and he didn't get Illinois. That's Obama's stronghold. But there is a bit of a realignment. It's nowhere near the 1968 realignment. However, are conservative policies going to be passed? Yes. Trump may not necessarily be a conservative, but he's going to have to pander to that part of the point. So ultimately, I think we should be careful about that on this year with conversion therapy and all these alt-right policies. I mean, those are aiming at the part of the electoral, part of the people that are dying out. So in my opinion, if the Republican Party was smart, they would adopt a more benign social stance. If that makes sense. And
no, yeah, I agree with that. I think that
I would also focus on fiscal issues and that conservatives win 9-10 times.
Yeah, I think that this will. What were you gonna say?
I mean, I'm a pretty socially moderate guy, but I'm just looking at the way the party's constructed right now. I don't think we're ready to go fully socially moderate on issues. The group of voters that we have, deeply religious, focused on family values, are values that win in a lot of our states, and trying to mess with that, I think, is much more dangerous than we need to. Granted, if you come up to Mass and rerun, you have people like Governor Baker that do take the liberty of becoming socially moderate candidates and running on a really socially progressive agenda, which I admire and appreciate. But if you look at states like Virginia, 4 years ago, Ken Cuccinelli, very socially conservative person who also won the millennial vote. The issue, I don't think, is the policy platform. It's just engaging new communities and ensuring that we get out there and we bring our ideas to new people. Groups like College Republicans have candidates come talk to our students, and ensuring that we create this, cultivate just this new engagement among different communities.
So what I'll say about that is, so there's a theory of realignment in terms of like the different coalitions that a party has, but there's also kind of this theory that a party is either an ideological party or a coalition party. What we generally think of a coalition party is the Democrats, right? They bring together the far left, the progressives, the moderate Democrats, put some independents in the mix. Like, they're very good at forming that coalition. The Republicans have been for a very long time an ideological party. There's this idea that there are rules to follow as a conservative, and if you don't follow them, for the most part, if you don't follow them, you won't be an elected Republican. And I think, even though we haven't had the White House in 8 years, you still had a very strong Republican Party, especially in states. And I think the idea that the Republican Party should, I think the Republican Party is becoming more of a coalition party. You have social conservatives in it. You have liberty-minded people who aren't quite ready to kind of maybe commit to the Libertarian Party or just don't want to from a pragmatic standpoint. You have moderates, less moderates, but like you were saying, Ben, in Massachusetts, you have moderates there who actually do pretty well because they're not on the far right. So I think the party is becoming a little more of a coalitionist party. And what that means is that I think you have a harder time maintaining the top power, right? You have a harder time electing a president or getting a nominee that enough people will like, because you have all these different coalitions that you have to please. Clinton clearly did not please all of the coalitions in the Democratic Party. There are Bernie people who still to this day, some of them will say it's rigged, but others just do not like her and don't think that she represents progressive values. And so I think looking forward for the Republican Party, maybe that's the realignment that's happening, is that the Democrats are becoming more ideological. Maybe the Republican Party is becoming more of a coalition-based party, and perhaps what we might see moving forward. Now, obviously, we have a Republican president-elect, and it feels like almost my entire life it hasn't been that way. I was so small with George Bush. I almost said Jeb Bush, and that was
man,
weird.
Come on.
I know. I hate to poke fun. But so I do think that there's a lot of big questions, and spoiler alert, we're not going to answer all of them tonight because we just don't know yet. And I think that the first 2 years are going to be so interesting. Let's talk about something a little more kind of non-political, but it's this idea of how does America move forward. I love the imagery that comes out after Election Day of like this gaping wound that needs to be healed in the country. Because people get very emotional, and I understand. I get a little emotional too, but I also don't think it's the end of the world. Like, I think we've probably gone through worse. So I know this is a very broad question, and there's no right answer, I think. But Tucker, we'll start with you. What are some things that Americans can do? What are some things that the country can do to maybe simmer down a little bit and continue on whatever lives people live?
Yeah, actually a lot, just because I've seen people, my friends as Democrats on campus really struggle with this. I mean, to tears, to having talked to people and whatnot. I tweeted earlier today that we have to stop calling people them, and we have to call each other us. We're all Americans. Donald Trump, some people hate it, some people love it. He's the president of us. You might not agree with it. We didn't agree with President Obama when he was elected on, basically anything. But I respect President Obama because he's my president. I think, Trump's tone last night in his speech was good, and I was really surprised by it. I think that's the kind of tone we need. He needs to settle down and realize the power he has now. He's the most powerful man in the world. To do everything he can to bring this country together in every way possible. I mean, there's such a divide, and I see it every single day. Did we lose him?
I think we did. I say we just keep rolling with it till he gets back, because I agree with you. I think that,
I think it's kind of hard. I think a lot of people are taking this loss a lot harder than they should. But I am also a 21-year-old white male, middle class. I don't have the story. Yeah, I have. Yeah, I don't deal with some certain stuff that people deal with, and I understand that. I don't get what they're feeling with this, but I don't think it's not the end of the world. Like you said, we've gone through a lot worse in this country. And I think everyone needs to respect him until he gives us a reason not to respect him.
Yep, no, I agree 100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, if this was the Donald Trump of 18 months ago who was calling Mexicans rapists and kind of just being a generally unhinged candidate, I would be much more concerned about what he would do as president. But I think he's definitely calmed that part of it down. He's run a much more professional campaign over the last few weeks. And those are all things that really matter when it comes to the president and temperament and issues like that. And I think that's he's definitely done what he's necessary on that end of it as well. Uniting the country, absolutely. It needs to come together. I think that President Obama and Hillary Clinton today did a very good job of trying to unite the country again. And Trump as well last night struck a really interesting and smart and very unifying tone in his acceptance speech. And I think we're going to be fine going forward.
I agree. The sun did indeed come out, although here it was cloudy today and a little gloomy, which I don't know. Mother Nature's funny. Giovanni, your thoughts on this huge wound that needs to be stitched back together? Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. As you're figuring that out, I'll do some filler commentary there. I do agree, and what I think it's really going to take is a lot of self-leadership. We get so involved in political system, in political elections and cycles and all this stuff, especially us, right? Because we're engaged every day in the politics. We get so involved in this idea that whoever is the next president will determine how our lives will be impacted in a big way. And while the government certainly has an impact, I think what people really need to start doing is kind of looking at themselves. And I know we talk about it like it's time for national reflection. It's time for people to look at themselves. But really, I think it really is time to look at, like, how have you acted during this election? How have you engaged with other people, especially friends and family? How did you engage with them when it came to political issues or political news or things like that? Did you vote for someone that you believed in? And how are you going to act going forward? And I think it's going to take a lot of self-leadership, a lot of self-reflection. And whether you are on the side that says that we are doomed or on the side that says that we're going down a great path, I still think there's always room for improvement. And certainly in a democracy, I think a democracy is only as healthy as the people's mindset. And I think we need to get to a healthier mindset. What I would really enjoy is just a higher level of education. And I'm not even making a claim about certain sides being less educated. I think both sides are not as educated as we could be. I think that our country can be a little more educated civically, politically, in all those different aspects. Giovanni, did you get audio working? Not yet. Okay, let's go and talk about what is upcoming for millennials, us young people. We mentioned earlier, right, Obamacare. The fate of Obamacare is probably in trouble, which there's arguments to be made on both sides. I think it would be I think a reform of it would be a generally good thing, especially for young people. We also have people who are getting in the job market, or they're just starting out in the job market, or they're going to college, right? So there's all these different things that are going to start affecting us. Ben, what are some of the immediate, like, if you were a Trump